The question of happiness, nay, the question of meaning, is the topic of this video, right? It is interesting enough that species like us are even able to contemplate their existence. Why are we even given this ability to think about something that is out of our reach? We can only blame ourselves. Nay, we can only blame our environment, our education, our parents, right? Wrong. So long as this natural system continues, humans are bound to be trapped in their existential crises. I do not think our ancestors really worried about afterlife or thought deeply about how they wanted to live their lives. It is only recently, alongside with some philosophers and cognitive scientists, that we have started questioning existence, meaning, and consciousness. One approach is from the naturalist. Some would call him the spiritualist. Nonetheless, he believes that there is a natural tendency, a natural order that constitutes life, that creates, sustains, and destroys life. But nature does not pertain to any metaphysical realm, as I will supplement many examples of how nature's behavior intertwines with all living beings at a physical level. For now, let's start by examining our main question. Why do we ask questions? Why do we ask questions that only disappoint us because they don't have any answer, perhaps a concrete answer? A phenomenon exists only if it is able to be interpreted by a human. A dog does not question why it is not able to walk freely in the park, nor does the dog think that there is something like walking freely, for it believes that it is normal to be chained by a human, to be treated as a pet, not an independent animal. If a human was conditioned in the exact manner, he would too believe that he is no better than dog, right? Wrong. Something that makes the human different is classical conditioning. Classical conditioning could work sometimes, but it can't create humans to not think. We can inhibit our primitive tools, such as senses, desires, fears, but we cannot get rid of the phenomena of thought, curiosity, and wonder. Through these immerses a vast range of knowledge. Most importantly, it gives rise to philosophy. Philosophy literally means love for wisdom. In this quench for wisdom, the man continues to ask questions that seem to make him curious. And questions about meaning and existence are by far the man's worst nightmare. Since the man believes he can learn everything about himself, he wants to understand what happens to him after life, what happens to him during life. Thus, he experiments with his body. He uses logic, deduction, and data, and experience from past knowledge to come to a conclusion about his own self. It is important to understand that the man would never do this if it were not for his ability to question, to wonder, and to always fall into the trap of causality. That's right, causality. Causality is the man's worst trap. It traps everyone. Even the greatest philosophers have been trapped due to causality. We are naturally bound to believe that things happen for a reason. We cannot absurdly say that things happen for the sake of happening. That would be illogical, and certainly people would not believe that. But herein lies the problem of mankind. The ignorant human thinks he is smart, intelligent, and capable of understanding all there is in the world. All science is based on deduction of data and application of theory. Not to mention science is now evolving with better technologies and perhaps a better brain being given to the human due to genetic changes, and perhaps even the natural selection, as some of those Darwinians would say. The individual examining phenomena, that is, science, and the phenomena itself, that is, science itself, have been progressing and have been becoming more and more distinct than before. Seeking for objectivity is a myth. Knowledge is all relative to the time. How foolish is to think truth lies in understanding science through deduction. How foolish is to think that there is an objective truth in the world. How foolish to think that all events in life happen for a reason, let alone imagining that we are capable of understanding those exact things that are beyond our reach. We are foolish in thinking that our knowledge is ideal, real, and universal. Just because it is practical, sensible, perhaps deductive, and the data for it is consistent, doesn't mean it is real or eternally real. There are many errors in examination and deduction, most importantly the concept of confirmation bias. But the bottom line is that our predispositions of following the law of causality, believing that we are almighty and thoughtful and capable of understanding everything there is in the world, keeps us ignorant and away from the truth. In the end, we create illusions for ourselves and believe our own creations to be true. Pure foolishness. Let's look at the naturalist way of life. A naturalist is someone who studies nature, the nature of phenomena and events. All scientists are naturalists, as science is an integral part of nature, but science is only one part of nature, as there is much more to nature in the natural world than what the scientific community has provided. A spiritualist is also a naturalist, as he looks at the nature not through deductive eyes or inductive eyes or reasoning eyes, but through self-realization eyes. But beyond the spiritualist and scientist lies a greater person who views nature as it is. Both the spiritualist and the scientist try to find something in nature, try to accumulate knowledge about nature. The spiritualist will study history of his ideology, religion, and philosophy. The scientist will study the world's physical concepts and relate them to previous findings and theories. Both try to use their predisposed knowledge to understand more about the knowledge that they have not yet gained. This, in itself, is paradoxical. We create tools and methods to understand something that we have never yet understood. We create machines, robots, and other materials for the exact same reason, all for foolishness. A true naturalist does not try to understand the world by deduction or studying philosophy or religion. A true naturalist experiences reality as it is. He associates nature with himself. He does not look at nature as a distinct part from himself. He sees nature within and without himself. Nature works without the man's knowing of it. What I mean by that is that the man need not know everything about nature, but nonetheless, the nature will do its natural job and continue to provide life. Time and space are created by humans, and so is knowledge. A man could sleep day and night, and his body would believe that he only sleeps during night, but nature does not. Nature does not wait for the man. Nature continues to do what it needs to, regardless of the man's understanding of it. When the man tries to understand nature, when he tries to deduce, through his own predispositions, about what nature is, he falls further in his own foolish illusion. The man can only interpret knowledge as per his intellect. He can only gain as much as his brain can provide. Yet, the natural knowledge is not that knowledge that comes from deducing, learning, or thinking. It comes from pure experience. It comes from the association of conviction, journey, and attainment. Life in itself is dual by nature. We see this everywhere. Every tree shreds its leaves and gets new ones. Every flower blossoms in the fall, but then falls rotten in winter. Every animal is able to gather food, spend time outside, and enjoy the sun in the summer. But that exact same animal has to suffer in the cold winter. Suffering and joy are two cycles, perhaps the same cycle of one another. Nature is a cycle of life and death, which themselves are interpreted as good and bad by people. Though for nature, there is no good and bad. These concepts of morality, principles, religion, ethics, rationality, logic, and deduction are all human-created concepts to perhaps tell ourselves that these are tools to understanding nature and the natural phenomena, perhaps the phenomena that we live in. But nature is quite the opposite of all this. Nature is pure, simple, calm, and equanimous. We do not need to deduce anything. We do not need to think too much about it. It's quite simple, paradoxically. Nature is dual and never discriminating. Every living being dies, but every living being is given a life to experience fully. All seasons are cyclic in nature. Every day is cyclic in nature, thus giving hope for future. A day and night go by. Summer and winter go by. If nature does not discriminate seasons, days, animals, humans, trees, plants, Why do humans discriminate so much? Why do we have such animosity within nature, within our own species? Who are we to call ourselves almighty? After all, we are just one part of nature. We will all come and go. Just like I said, it's cyclic, it's a cycle. The human comes in and experiences uttermost joy in his childhood, maybe even in his youth, when he starts creating relationships. But then, in adulthood, he starts wondering about his purpose, and in old age, he realizes that one day he too will be gone. But until he becomes old, he keeps telling himself that death is far away. He keeps consolidating himself by having an ego. Our concept of self allows us to say, I am different. I am unique. I will do this, and I will live like this. We never understand that this too is going to pass. The root of all our ignorance lies in believing that we are not who we are because of nature, but believing that we are who we are because of our beliefs, because of our thoughts, because of our ego and family, friends, and at last the most important, our brain and intellect. This brain that is given to us is always creating a narrative for ourselves. We create a story for ourselves. We cling to these memories as if they belong to us. We expect our story to have a happy ending, nay, a happy plot in general. So we go for money, we go for relationships, we go for enjoyment. Some are smart enough to escape all desires and seek knowledge. But herein also lies the problem. For the sake of knowledge, some say they will do anything. Once again, I will remind that humans cannot attain whilst having their predisposed selves. Their predisposition inhibits them, yet they are ignorant to this exact fact. They continue seeking knowledge, but they already have this predisposition and biases to counter that knowledge. They can only create upon their axiomatic beliefs and understanding. These axioms are not truly false, nor are they truly true, but they are human-created. That's why they're axioms. Thus, they lack real, natural truth, a truth that goes beyond the human. Back to our brains creating stories. We fall into the trap of believing we are this body that has been given to us by nature, this body which has and will be sustained by nature, this body which will be destroyed by nature itself. If nature does not give us food, we won't live. If nature does not provide shelter, we won't live. My friend, until you think you are separate from the nature, until you think you are special and intelligent, you will never gain true knowledge. Thus, you must leave all possessions, including family, wealth, occupation. One must leave all predispositions that he believes constitute his existence. After leaving all physical attachments, one must leave his mental attachments as well. One must leave all desires of everything. One must forget all the memories of past. One must forget what the society has told him, that he must go to college, earn money, and raise a family. One must leave the good and bad aside. One must leave all possessions, mental and physical, and strive to be one with the nature. That's his ultimate reality. It's just the illusion that he has created in his body. After all, we will have to leave everything one day or the other, right? So why be so hasty and anxious when doing so voluntarily? And so death becomes an option, right? No, death is never the option. Because though death liberates the man, it does not allow him to liberate others. A man should liberate himself and guide others to liberate themselves too. When I mean liberate, I mean liberating from our predispositions, our emotions, our suffering, our memory, and our own intellect. If one dies, he dies thinking he will liberate, but nor has he liberated from his fears, nor has he liberated from facing the horrors of his life. If anything, he just got caught up in his emotions and intellect. He gave up. In order to liberate, the man clinged on to his philosophy of nihilism and pessimism and believed that life had no meaning. Paradoxically, he had believed that there was a meaning. There was meaning in dying. So therefore, he was paradoxical in his own nature. Unlike him who tries to liberate forcefully, a true naturalist liberates whilst being one with nature, very easily and peacefully, knowing that this body, this mind, perhaps even this spirit, all belong to the nature, one has completely trained himself to live a simple life. A natural life is a simple and quiet life. It is a life that is lived naturally with the help of nature. A natural life does not require machines, objects, or technologies. A natural life requires conviction of being pure, being liberated, and being calm and quiet. Thus, by leaving all desires and all philosophical biases, a man lives a balanced life. So what does this man do? What does he accomplish? And how do I know all this? And how do I know he liberates? After all, I might just be a fake preacher. But before examining how this phenomenon of being one with nature works, I must caution you that language is also a human construct. I can attempt to explain a phenomenon that lies beyond explanation, but in the end, it is you, yes, it is you yourself, that has to experience that phenomenon. After all, belief will never take you anywhere, even if that belief is on some divine being. You must experience the concept of being one with the nature, and only then will you understand it. Not just understand it, every part of your body will experience it. Being in the present moment, mentally, physically, and intellectually, and leaving all biases and predispositions aside, and accepting to live a simple life will allow you to live a natural life. One cannot do these both until he trains his brain and mind. Thus, herein comes in meditation and mindfulness. To be one with the nature requires the understanding that I am not the body. Since my brain controls the body, it can be concluded that I am the brain, right? But no, the brain itself is controlled by my predispositions. So I am those predispositions, right? No, those predispositions also come from millions of people before me, and environment that has been predisposed to me. And these people that predisposed their knowledge onto me had their own predispositions. So this cycle of predisposition only ends with the nature being first thing in the universe. Mankind is miniature compared to the nature's presence. Nature is everything, within and without us. Even though we die, we will still be in nature. Even though we do not die, we will still be in nature. The food we eat creates biochemical reactions in our body to supply nutrients and proteins to the body. Without nature's ability to provide food, the man is no longer alive. The man is no longer alive if trees stop producing oxygen. The man is no longer alive if the sun stops shining every day. The man is no longer alive if the earth becomes infertile. The man is no longer alive if the rivers are polluted, and climate and environment is affected for the sake of enjoyment and momentary pleasure for humanity. We soon realize that the man is completely helpless without nature. Mentally, physically, and emotionally, all is part of nature. Within his body, which is composed of cells, DNA, and genes, comes from nature as well. We are nothing but composition of this natural phenomena. Even this foolish brain, which thinks that it is separate, it is different, it is almighty, and is special, is also created by the nature. Thus, we have to train every single part of our body, every single part of ourselves, to believe that we are not this physical entity. We are an accumulation of all living beings, all natural beings, and all natural phenomena. We are not alone even in this body. We are full of bacteria, fungi, and foods that are part of nature. Thus, meditation of yourself and this phenomena leads to understanding your true self, the self that goes beyond this physical and singular entity. If nature is within and without, what is the meaning of my life? Quite simply, is to liberate from being unnatural to being natural, to being pure and to being calm, to be balanced and simple. We can learn this intellectually, but that is still a brain's activity. Through meditation, we lower all brain activity and completely go within ourselves. We continue to find all nature within, and when we become enlightened, we realize the nature that is within me is the same nature that is without me. I do not die, I do not live, I do not experience, I do not become happy, nor do I become sad. I am not the emotions, nor am I the mind or even the brain that produces those emotions or that experience of emotion. There is no God, there is no human, there is no truth, nor are there any lies. There is no good, nor there is bad. These are all human creations to create consciousness. All that there is natural experience. All of our consciousness is only momentary, only singular, according to our brain. Yet if we become conscious of nature, leave the brain aside, and allow nature and natural phenomena to come to us easily, if we can connect with the nature to the extent where we do not feel separate entity, but rather connected with it, we will soon reach nirvana. Nirvana isn't any part of religion. Buddha is not a god, but he's a simple, plain human who has been awakened. The Bu in Buddha means intellect. Dha means above. He who is aroused above his own intellect is a Buddha, and he who has experienced all nature within and without him is he who has experienced nirvana. The awakened one does not gain anything after nirvana. There is no accumulation of wealth, nor any accumulation of knowledge. The Buddha did not gain a single thing after experiencing nirvana. Yet, he lost a lot of things. He lost all his predispositions that I talked about before, that always come in your way. He lost all his impulsive reactions, his biological responses such as fear, anxiety, stress. He lost his self-concept. He lost his uttermost ego, not just the emotional ego that you have or the psychological emotional ego you have, but even the body ego. He had realized that he's not the body. He lost the uttermost sense control of his own physical singular entity, and even his body had realized that it is separate from him who has awakened. Such is the story of him who has experienced true peace. When there is no self, there is no death. When there is no death, there is no life. And when there is no life, what remains is just experience. Just the ability to experience phenomena as it is, not as our brains make it. In the end, deep silence only comes from understanding that I, the physical and singular entity, is an illusion. Not just understanding this concept, but experiencing it. Every inch of the body is felt as different from oneself, and all natural phenomena is experienced as oneself after experiencing this. If a snake bites an awakened one, for example, he would not react whatsoever, and even his brain would not, as he has trained his brain to realize that the snake that is biting is the same as the human that is being bitten. And the body and the brain that is experiencing the pain are only illusions of creating that experience. It is only the mind, or perhaps the brain, that gives pain, pleasure, suffering, joy, and all emotions of attachment. When these attachments are gone, when we have realized that we are not singular, but we are everywhere, we soon give up fear, anxiety, pain, and all emotions and live purely, calmly, and peacefully. Thus, this language can only go so far. One has to experience this ultimate concept of being one with the nature, and away from the body and brain, by himself. One cannot learn to do so. One cannot practice. One can only practice to do so by repeating meditation day and night. After training the mind to be silent, to lower all thoughts, and to remain balanced no matter what situation arises, we have accomplished the singular goal in our life, to be liberated from our predispositions. Because it is our brain that creates good and bad, life and death, and so forth, we ourselves are illusions, and we must remind ourselves to go beyond that. We must remind ourselves that we are beyond the brain. That is, if we can understand and are not skeptical of this phenomena. The question I imposed earlier, way earlier, why do we ask questions? I hope that you can answer this by now. If you're still here, most likely, if you are here, you're really interested in that question. We ask questions to create answers. Because all answers Our creations, their ability to understand. Questions and answers themselves are created, not experienced. All answers are already within us. Maybe for once in a while we should stop asking questions and try introspecting within us. You will find deep silence and nothingness within yourself, and at last you will liberate from yourself, from your questions, from your curiosity, and at last from your singular, physical, experimental self.